So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We are at the top of the hour, but are going to give another 2 minutes for other sisters, colleagues from across the region and beyond to join. So just bear with us, enjoy the music, and we'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar in SIHA's series, It's Not Your Fault, and it's themed Confronting the Systematic Drivers of Femicide in the Greater Horn of Africa and Strategizing for Accountability, Prevention and Response. My name is Lorraine Karai, and I will be your moderator for today's vital discussion. We are truly honored to have all of you with us, whether you're joining from South Sudan, Sudan, Uganda, Ethiopia, Somalia, Somaliland, or beyond. This series is a part of a regional campaign to bring the issue of femicide out of the shadows and into public and political consciousness. Today, we gather not only to speak about femicide as a growing crisis, but together to collectively examine its systematic and political drivers, and to imagine feminist strategies for justice, prevention, and change. We want to acknowledge that some of the discussions might be emotionally charged. Please do take care of yourselves as we move through this session. To ensure that this webinar runs smoothly and is productive for all participants, we kindly ask that you follow some of these simple rules. One of the rules that we ask is that you do feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. We would love to know who is in the room. You're welcome to use the chat function to post your comments or your questions throughout the webinar. You can access it by clicking the chat icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd like your message to be seen by everyone, please direct it to everyone in the chat, but we will also be able to see private messages, and you can select a particular participant that you'd like to direct your question to. We have 90 minutes for this webinar and will attempt to accommodate all questions. But if your question is not addressed during the session, we request that you feel free to reach out to the SIHA team via info@sihanet.org, and you'll have a response as soon as it's possible. And where you feel your specific question has not been responded to by one of the panelists, we also welcome you to email info@sihanet.org. I want to remind everyone that translation services have been provided. This webinar is being conducted in English with translations available concurrently in Amharic, Arabic, and Somali. And if you'd like to access the translation, please click on the interpretation icon. It's a globe symbol at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and please do feel free to select your preferred language. We encourage you to share content from some of the presentations and the speakers' notes during this event. However, to protect confidentiality and safety of participants, we request that you do not share any identifying information that could be names, photos, without any consent. We encourage open discussion and welcome different viewpoints, and we request that everyone be respectful in your communication, both with panelists and with participants. This webinar is going to be recorded, and we request that at the end of the webinar, you step back and take a group photo with us. Thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to a fruitful and meaningful and engaging discussion. So with this, I would like to introduce very briefly our amazing speakers. We have 3 speakers. Our first speaker is Hala Al-Karib, who is a Sudanese and African feminist. She is an activist, a community organizer, and a research practitioner with over 2 decades of experience across Sudan, South Sudan, Eastern Africa, and the Horn of Africa. Her work centers on empowering grassroots women and local communities to take ownership of their governance and development processes. She currently serves as SIHA's regional director. Our second speaker is Kia, a feminist researcher, writer, and gender advocate from Ethiopia with a decade of experience in gender advocacy. And one of her highlights is the role she played as a gender and media expert with the European Journalism Center in Africa, where she amplified voices of African women. She is the founder of Article 35, a feminist initiative. And finally, we have Shamsa Dahi, who is a Somali gender and human rights expert with over 15 years of experience in legal reform, gender justice, GBV prevention in Somalia and Kenya. She's been an advisor on national laws for the former Senior Gender and Human Rights, the federal government of Somalia, and played critical roles with the EU and World Bank funded programs in Somalia. And she's a leading voice in Somalia. So let's begin our conversation with our first speaker, Hala, who is going to be sharing with us the broader picture when we talk about femicide. Hala, across the Horn of Africa region, what patterns or trends do you see when it comes to femicide, particularly in conflict and displacement contexts like Sudan and South Sudan? What makes it
so persistent and
yet
yet so individualized?
please share with us what femicide is and
respond
respond to this question.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Over to you, Hala.
Well, thank you very much, Laureen. And thank you very much, everyone. Can you mute, please? Because I hear an echo. Yeah. And thank you very much for everyone who made the effort to join this critical and important webinar today. And just to have a discussion about this vital issue of gender killing or femicides. I really appreciate the fantastic attendance and the commitments. So that's very telling that we are all willing to have a sincere conversations about this topic. And I encourage all of you, to be honest and to be transparent as we are navigating this issue. In this particular part of the world, speaking and having an honest conversation, communications about gender killing or femicide has not been something that was done frequently. It was an issue that was often concealed and hidden, and although it was always identified as one of the severe patterns of violence against women, there is a multiple, kind of languages that was used to tone it down, to tone this horrific violence down. Like sometimes people will talk about domestic violence. Sometimes people will be speaking about, women getting killed in conflicts, and so on. But the most dangerous thing that, in this part of the world, women have been killed very, very systematically in our region, Eastern and Horn of Africa, but also across the continent. And if we look at the research that was done by the UN Women in 2023, despite the challenges in accessing data, you will find that Africa actually is at the highest, in terms of prevalence of femicides compared to any other part of the world. This is despite the fact that there is, as feminist organizations, as civil society, we did not invest it, in collecting specific data and informations and documenting patterns of femicide. So it's it's quite alarming, and the more there is political tension and there is destitute and disparity, the most kind of most remarkable type of violence against women that emerged very quickly is killing of women. Either killing of women by their intimate partners or by their family members, and of course in the status of conflict and post-conflict situations. Killing of women is always manifested as a sign of insecurity. And the sad part is that women being killed, and sometimes underage girls, little girls being killed, it's always viewed as collateral damage. And it's completely forgotten, when we are discussing the politics of discrimination, and when we are discussing, the politics of violence against women. And, when I'm talking about the politics of violence against women, it's really very important also for all of us to understand that our struggle to end violence against women and girls, to end femicides or gender killings, it's also part, of a political struggle. So it's not something that we can do in isolation without analyzing the context very, very well, understanding, the root causes, and then design our strategy to counter these horrific patterns of violence. Through our work within SIHA across the region, we see women getting killed, unfortunately, and extremely hard to say that, but that happened on daily occurrence. We don't have the capacity and the tools yet to track that, but women are killed in this region for going to school. We have documented cases of women, they were killed because they entered university. And we have seen young women who were killed because they graduated from university. I remember we have published statements about the young woman who was killed for graduating from School of Medicine, I believe, in Somalia. Women were killed for winning a seat in parliament. They were killed around, as they were campaigning for a seat in parliament. They were killed for asking for divorce. They were killed for daring to flee domestic violence. We were killed for, I just realized I should say we, because we are all of us, as women, and as, communities as well. We are exposed to be killed, for anything, for having access to resources. We were killed for land, because we are owning land, and others want to grab it. For being successful, we were killed for being poor, and for not having any access to resources. And, we were killed for finding ourselves in very vulnerable situations, walking late at night on the streets, can expose many of us in many locations around this region to be killed. For being part of certain professions, women were killed. Women were killed also in closed societies, like in Sudan or in Somalia, or where there is extremists who are in control of the territory. Women could be easily killed for being pregnant or for delivering a child without being married. The sad, reality that we need really to pay attention to, according to the UN, that every 10 minutes there is a woman get killed for one reason or the other, among the ones that I have mentioned. And in conflict areas and post-conflict areas, literally killing of women is part of an everyday reality. They were killed, our daughters, our sisters were killed for resisting being sexually assaulted, for standing up to violence. We have documented a case of a mother who was hanged to death for demanding the release of her son, who was, and that happened in Sudan, who was caught by the armed militia. We have also documented cases of a school teacher who was killed because she was asking, some young men with guns to stop humiliating, some people who were traveling. She was just shot, killed for just raising her voice. Older women in conflicts, they were often getting killed repeatedly, and silently, where nobody talk about that. And I have seen that happening in the conflict in Sudan. I have seen it happening in South Sudan. Women with disability are very, very susceptible to be killed, often. And we have seen that also happening, and we have documented some cases of women with disability who were just killed, by non-state actors, by military groups, and so on. They are, we're also living in a region where there is a significant patterns of and tendency to criminalize and demonize women. So while there is this huge number of women who were killed, as extrajudicial killing, there are women who were actually systematically killed, by the legal system, sentenced to death by the legal system, in line with discriminatory laws that judge women based on their identity, who they are, and just demonize women. The whole structure of the law is based on demonizing women. And I think, I don't recall that I have seen, in any of our countries, a clear policy that looks seriously at the issue of gender killing or the issue of femicides, nor did we have that clearly within our gender based violence frameworks or national actions plans in any of the countries. I think, that reflects also on the work of civil society and feminist and women organizations. There is no clear constructed programs and strategy or research that look, into the patterns of femicide. I think maybe recently I've seen some articles and papers that came out of Kenya. There is some discussion in Uganda, I believe, but I don't recall. Maybe I missed. I don't recall seeing a paper on the prevalence of femicide, or the growing culture, this horrific culture of femicide. And I think the issue of killing women, is definitely, rooted in the dehumanizations of women, but it's also, in my view, it's a reflection on the growing patterns, of eliminations of others, and of course, when the whole structure or construct, it's based on lack of accommodations, a lack of acceptance of others, so the main way of thinking will be how to eliminate each other, and you start with the weak, and you start with the vulnerable, and women and the perceptions towards women, considering our disadvantage, in the countries we are living in, are easy to commit crimes against us, especially if we take into account the systemic lack of accountability, and the more or less, in many occasions, normalizations of women being killed, and sometimes justifying it, or acting so apologetically around it, around this, this horrific practice, the desire to, to remove women, and to remove anyone who would challenge the status quo, and the construct, being a woman or someone with different gender identity or so on. So, I mean, what I would really like us, and I'm here just like you, I'm here to learn, first of all, and to listen to all of you experience in terms of how did you approach these horrific crimes? How did your legal system approach these horrific crimes? And your experiences, with awareness within your communities about it. If some of you have done that, and how did you navigate this issue? And then the whole issue of impunity and dealing with women as collateral damage. How did you approach it? Because this is actually what results on the fact that we are still struggling, and actually it's exacerbating, this horrific violence against women, and one of the most gruesome phases, of violence against women. Hopefully all of us, we will be able to do more work on it, to popularize it, as I said, as one of the most gruesome patterns of violence against women, and to speak very loudly about it, because it is happening to us. It has been happening to us for a while, but it was never being talked about or addressed. And I think, it's about time for us as African women, as women who are living in this part of the world and who are bearing, the burden, is to be able to loud and clear identify and define the challenges that we are faced with, and to identify our priorities very, very clearly, and our struggle. With this, I guess I'm going to go back to Laureen, and thank you very much for listening, and very eager to hear your questions and interact further with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hala, for that. You've in a nutshell said there is no place that is safe for women, for girls across. And from the research that you've quoted from UN Women, 51,000 women die annually as a result of femicide. And you've also shared with us how this is revealing the systematic misogyny and the broader dehumanization of women, erasing them, whether it's public, social, or political life across. So thank you so much, Hala. I will move on to Kia, who's joining us from Ethiopia. And very similar question, if you could speak to us about, the deep-rootedness of femicide in culture norms, talking about militarized masculinities, as well as political neglect. From your perspective, what are some of the common structural culture drivers that make femicide across the region not just an isolated incident, but a wider crisis? And it would be good if you can zoom into the Ethiopia context as well, looking at the state institutions, legal, political, and social, and how Ethiopia is responding to femicide and valuing lives of women and girls. Over to you, Kia. We are not able to hear you. Yes, now I think
Good
your
afternoon,
mic is
everyone,
working.
and thank you for the opportunity to address the urgent and sorry. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to address the urgent and deeply troubling issue of femicide. And I will start by giving the broader context, and I will narrow down it to the Horn of Africa and to the Ethiopian context. So, according to the United Nations Economic and Social Council Vienna Declaration on Femicide, there are around 11 types of gender-based violence that are categorized as femicide, which includes FGM-related death, the days related due to the intimate partner violence and the targeted killing of women and girls in the conflict affected areas. And also on top of this, I would like to reiterate what the data mentioned by Hala, and according to the UN Office on Drugs and Crime reports, in 2021 alone, more than 45,000 women were killed around the world, and this number has risen to 51,000 51,000 cases of femicide were recorded around the world. So this means, as Hala said, one woman every 10 minutes is killed. And according to the same report, Asia holds the first ranking with 17,800 femicide cases, and which is followed by Africa with 17,200 femicide cases. From this data, you can understand that the number of femicides are the number of femicide cases are high in Africa, and the problem is structural and systemic, which is deeply rooted in the regional, political, cultural, and social fabric. And when I say social fabric, I'm referring to patriarchy, which is, I believe, that perceive women as less and subordinate instead of equal. And, you know, the source of patriarchy is power imbalance between men and women. So this makes it political. Additionally, there are some factors that contributed for the rise of femicide in the Horn of Africa, which includes the prolonged conflicts, militarized masculinity, FGM, intimate partner violence, and some cultural norms. So I will try to define what militarized masculinity is. As you know, in countries like Ethiopia, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and Eritrea, you know, men are generally have been raised in an environment where you know, control and dominance or violence is celebrated. And when we are associating this patriarchal trait with military services where violence is glorified, we refer it as militarized masculinity. And the trend is more or less similar across different African countries, including the Horn of Africa. But to substantiate my arguments, I'm going to give some example from Sudan, Somalia, and Ethiopia. So due to the prolonged conflict in Sudan, as of April 2025, more than 12 million Sudan women were become vulnerable to different forms of gender-based violence, including targeted killing. And the worst part is 80% of the health facilities in Sudan, or especially in the conflict-affected areas, are not properly working on functioning. So that means those women who are vulnerable to different forms of you know, gender-based violence, or it will increase their chance of death, or, you know, it will reduce their survival rates. On top of that, the Darfur women the Darfur Women Group has released one report which says that around 130 women were committed mass suicide since they are afraid of, you know, the widespread gender-based violence, including sexual violence in Sudan. So you can see the extent of, you know, how the prolonged conflict is contributing to femicide and other forms of gender-based violence. The same is true when we talk about Somalia, because there is a prolonged conflict between Al-Shabaab and the Somali government in Somalia. So that means, you know, the number of women killed within the conflict context is also increasing. And according to the organization called Stop Rape Now, you know, there is a widespread gender-based violence in Somalia, including the sexual violence and targeted killing. So now let me come to Ethiopia. So the same is true in Ethiopia. For instance, during the 2-year-long war period in the northern parts of in the northern parts of Ethiopia. An organization called Wilson Center released a report that says, 40 to 50% of women were subjected to different forms of violence in Ethiopia. In regions like Tigray, Amhara, Afar, and Oromia region. Here to clarify, when the 2 years long conflict were ongoing in the northern parts of Ethiopia, parallelly there were ongoing conflicts in the Oromia region as well. So this shows us that the trends are similar. So militarized masculinity and prolonged conflicts across different parts of Africa, especially in the Horn of Africa, are contributing for the targeted killing of women. In addition to that, when I come to the cultural context, FGM is very prevalent in Somalia, Sudan, and Ethiopia. For instance, according to the latest report by GHoA, more than 90% of women between the age 50 and 49 in the Somalia parts of Ethiopia are subjected to femicide. The same is true in Afar, and also more than 80% of women are subjected to different forms of gender-based violence in the Eastern Hararghe region, and the number becomes 34 in the Amhara region. Again, intimate partner violence is also common. On top of this, political neglect and broken legal system are other issues that exacerbate the problem. And as you know, usually the participation of women in political system or in political dialogue is very limited. And also, the politicians are not considering gender-based violence as a political issue. Usually they sideline the issue of women from the mainstream political discourse, and they usually perceive it as a family or as a private matter. Even when there is a participation of women, those women, usually they don't bring the issue of gender-based violence on the table. So about the legal system, as far as I know, femicide is not considered as a separate crime in Ethiopia, for instance. So it is just treated as a homicide. So we couldn't, get enough data. So there's going to be no mechanism to collect data to know the exact extent of femicide in Ethiopia. So there is no data, means so the issue is invisible. So since the issue is invisible, it's
Kia, please, Kia, please, could you speak slowly for the interpreters? If you could try and speak a bit slowly, thanks.
I will try to slow down. So yeah, so due to the problem, the problems I already mentioned, it's become it becomes a bit harder to demand legal reforms. So to sum up, femicide thrives when the state refuses to call it by name, when justice systems are broken or inaccessible, and when the days of women are treated as private matter rather than national crisis or public crime. So in general, in Africa, specifically in the Horn of Africa, the prolonged conflict, militarized masculinity, broken legal system, cultural norms, and political neglect are contributing for the widespread they are causing femicide. But I will dive a bit into the case of Ethiopia in the next questions. Thank you, Lauren. Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Kia, for that. And you speak to, the continued challenges and the lack of a legal and policy framework, a broken system that we are operating in, and the need for a multi-sectoral pronged approach when it comes to addressing femicide, whether it's engaging with cultural norms or structures or policy. We need to find a way to have a holistic response to this endemic. So thank you so much, Kia. I will now move to Shamsa. We have seen in the recent months, there is a disturbing spike of femicide in Somalia and Somaliland, and particularly targeting women in public and political life. As a legal advocate and someone that has worked at the ministry level, working on strengthening protections, and particularly in Somalia and Somaliland, what do you see as the most glaring gaps when it comes to protection, prevention, and the legal framework? Over to you, Shamsa.
Thank you so much, Lorraine, and thank you to the other two speakers. Am I clear? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
The femicide issue in Somalia and Somaliland, the norms as people, as community, Somali community, we are people who are being shunned by the culture and the religion. We are stuck between religion and culture. And where people use culture more than the religion itself. The religion is diverse, very peaceful. It doesn't allow women to be oppressed. It doesn't allow women to be killed. It doesn't allow a small child to be raped and killed. But for people to protect their family name, the community name, it's more of a clan-based issue on customary laws that are in the Penal Code of 1962, where it's not even working. Where we need to enact reforms and policies to make sure the drivers, what are the drivers of the violence? When it comes to GBV, the FGM, that special need girl who is at home needs a law. Those special child that is at home, disabled, who cannot do anything, who cannot speak, some of them are verbally challenged, what law is it that protects them? Nothing. And we get cases of those ones who are at home, the specially need challenged girls who are being raped every day, who are being killed, and all of them are underage. What gives them the benefit of doubt for not enacting a policy or a law and having a customary law where in Somali it's called hair. Hair means a traditional law, where elders will come together, solve the issue, and that is it. Nobody cares about the stigma that woman or lady is going through. No one cares about the stigma or the trauma that little child will carry throughout her life. No one cares about that woman or lady who's being beaten and killed brutally every single day. So they're oppressed, they can't talk. There's no freedom of speech for women in Somalia and Somaliland, where a woman can come and say, this is my right. There's no human rights. There is no law that protects them. There is no law that or policy or government listens to them. They are all oppressed, and some of them kill themselves. Some of them, through depression, they just become mad and they just, they don't have a life to live. But the drivers and the justice gaps we have are many. And for us to come to that, we need to do a lot of advocacy. We need to do a lot of training, specifically from the government arms. That is the line ministries, mostly the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Women and Human Rights, CSOs, partners, stakeholders, who will publicly, with no, turning any, we will have to turn all the stones, and we have to advocate for that, and to make sure these laws are in place. For example, the COB bill, the sexual offensive bill, we very well know there are male chauvinism who are involved in that process. They don't want women to get that, because that law will guide them and protect them. We have reforms which are in place specifically for girls, school-going girls. We have done programs and sites on monitoring and data collections that we wanted all the ministries and the line ministries to use in the government to allow us to get the correct data, not only in the federal government, but in the state level government. The other thing is that we are supposed to actually look at is the gaps that I said are the justice laws and the reforms, and what needs to change. What needs to change urgently actually is the sexual offenses. We need to give women to have a platform where they can talk and stand up for their rights. All we need is to capacity build the government, actually the ministries that are in line with this, the stakeholders, the CSOs, the international community, the donors. All these are being, cannot be done without a funding. We need to drive a fund to make sure these things come to an end and we get a clear reform to guide our women and girls in Somalia. We need a reform to guide us and protect those small girls who are being raped every single day and they don't have a voice. Women are not supposed to talk in Somalia. They're supposed to lay low and bend their heads down to listen to the elders. And they are told, hey, the community is more important than you. They're being shut up, they can't talk. And only that, the only thing that will, help them or shape that thing and to bring this thing to an end and stop the killing of the women and the oppressions and the domestic violence they're facing is to have reforms and the legal reforms in mind. To train our police women and men, to train the judges, the prosecutors, all government arms that deal with this so that we get a clear reform and a good constitution that protects and guides women and protect our women and girls in the whole of Somalia. I know these issues are cross-cutting in the entire African countries, but for us specifically, in terms of culture and religion, we are stuck in between that. There's no religion that says women should be raped and killed. A minor should be killed. So all this will be part of the reforms that we are still pushing it, and we are there. We are not shutting up. We are taking the gender and the sexual offenses bills high and louder throughout the world, and we'll make sure these things, at least one by one, will add. One day, one time, we'll have a law. Right now, we have that, the Penal Code, it's not that much, but it constitutionally, customary constitution, it allows women on a legal, customary act that is not even benefiting them, because when they come to the elders, we know what we take, and there will be, that story will end there. Yeah, so we need to also do legal frameworks, because we don't have any recognition of femicide in Somalia. It's not recognized. It's recognized as something that's very normal, a norm that happens every single day, something that they can take on and talk with the elders and just end up under the tree. So it's not recognized. To do that, we need to do capacity building, we need to do trainings, we need to integrate women in that customary law. We still need to integrate women in that customary law known as hair in Somali, for them to become part of that even customary law, to allow them speak and know their rights through that customary law, if they are not allowed in the Constitution. But we're still pushing, we're here to work on it, and we're still working on it. And one day, one time, sooner or later, we will have a reform and a constitution that protects women and girls in Somalia and Somaliland.
So thank you so much, Shamsa. You raise a number of critical issues in Somalia and Somaliland. And I do remember a campaign that SIHA ran in 2021 when Honorable Amina was assassinated on her political campaign. It just goes to show the magnitude of this problem, and it dares to, scare or threaten any woman that comes out to engage publicly or in political engagements. Thank you so much, Shamsa, and also for reminding us that the legal and policy framework does not exist in the Somali region. Although there is a sexual offences bill and engagements around there, there are still glaring gaps that need to be addressed. I am also seeing some comments that are in the chat. Thank you so much, Jimal. We do take note of your comment. You mentioned that it's obvious that the root cause of every unnecessary action on women and girls and other vulnerable communities is the government leaders who've ignored all the rules for perpetrators that need to fulfill their role and their mandate. Thank you, Jamal, for that comment. I do encourage everyone in the webinar to please share your comments as the speakers are speaking. And if you have questions, we'll start to pick them up and pose them to our speakers. I now want to move on back to Hala. There is a lot around culture and religion that has been mentioned so far. If you could speak to us about the role and the interconnectedness between culture and religion and how this has increased vulnerabilities to femicide across the region. Over to you, Hala.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. And I think we tend to blame everything on. I call the culture and religion the black box. So so everything is we just put in that black box, and then we never open or unpack, and look inside it. And I think that's very intentional, because patriarchy and they don't want us to be able to unpack these concepts, because in reality, as Shamsa said, religion does not call for women to be killed. Contrary, all religions call for the protections of human lives, and for honoring human lives and the value of human life. So as culture, and culture is not something that's written in stone. Culture is a construct that was built intentionally to fit certain political context. So those of us who has been around for a long time, not like as young as many of you, we understand very well that there were certain cultures, that or certain practices that was actually built over the past 20 or 25 years, a discriminatory practices that they were not part of our culture at certain point in time. Growing up, the culture of segregation, for example, between men and women, it wasn't as ugly as it is right now within so many communities. And so it's really very, very important for us to understand that it's intentional, that we have been consistently excluded from the public spaces, because the more you exclude the voices of women and the presence of women, because the voices and the presence of women are about enlightenment, are about justice, about egalitarian society, it's about equality. So the more you eliminate us out of the picture, and use justifications, like come up with fake justifications of culture and traditions, the conversation will be closed, and then we don't have a space to struggle or to fight back. So I really encourage all of you, when someone talks to you, or when you hear the term culture and tradition, just say we are, or culture and religion. You say that our struggle is not, about, undermining our identity, but we want, let us sit and unpack, what do you mean by this? And not to be quiet, because the minute you sit and try to and work on unpacking and understanding what does that mean, you will find out how fake those claims are, and that the bottom line is just exclusions. So and that's really very important. Shamsa and Kay, I think, because both of you spoke about the legal framework, and you spoke about the policy framework. And any discussions around the legal framework or the policy framework will bring the whole issue of the black box again. So it's really important, to do our homework and to prepare ourselves, and even develop drafts and clear recommendations when it comes to the issue of femicide, starting from recommendations and strategies for tracking, for documentations, for understanding the root causes, strategies for collaborations with multiple actors within society, and then drafting clear recommendation, policy recommendation and legal recommendations that will counter this issue, and will expose it and give it, the true size of it, that women are getting killed while everyone is silent and turning their head the other way. But it definitely has nothing to do with who we are. It has nothing to do with our faith or traditions. It has a lot to do, with a very corrupt, construct and system of exclusion and oppression. Yeah, over to you, Lori.
Thank you so much, Hala. And I like that you call it a black box that needs to be opened, unpacked. We need recommendations, strategies to address this, as well as the fact that you've raised that we all have a role to play in challenging this. And there are a number of comments that complement what the speakers are saying. So Gofran does mention that there is need to challenge the misuse of religion and cultural frameworks that are legitimizing violence against women, and we must jointly reject these justifications and work together to be able to address femicide. Peace Chamureku also confirms that killing of women and femicide continues due to patriarchy, and there are a number of radios. This is about the media and their role they have to play in addressing femicide. Nunu Diana from South Sudan speaks about intimate partner violence being one of the forms of violence, and the fact that in South Sudan there's arranged marriages, there's revenge-related killing, there's targeted women and girls in conflict-related areas that have their, there's a lot of these increased vulnerabilities. And she also speaks about the limited data, which complements what has been said by the speakers here, and the reluctancy by civil society and human rights institutions to openly speak about femicide. The existing laws that are in place either narrowly define femicide or are making reference to the penal code. And for all of us that have penal codes, we know how very, very colonial that legislation is across our different contexts. The Q&A section has been opened, so please feel free to either use the webinar chat or the Q&A function that has been opened. There is also a comment from Osman speaking about the fact that we need a multi-layered long-term approach addressing root causes embedded in the social, political, legal, and economic systems, and also goes ahead to outline some recommendations for what needs to be done. Thank you, Osman. Glenn from Ethiopia is speaking about how complex and the interplay around the social, economic, and political factors. You also make some comments around patriarchy and its link to inequality and the deep entrenched norms in the Ethiopian society and how this devalues women and their role. Please do keep the comments coming in. We will try and continue to read as many as we can. Thank you so much for contributing to this conversation. Many of you are proposing very amazing and strong recommendations, and these will be documented and shared with everyone in this space. I want to ask one last question to our panelists and then open this up to the hubs to be able to speak, to our panelists to be able to ask their questions, and to be able to share any ideas they have to contributing to this conversation. So my last question to the panelists is to Kia. As someone that has been at the front line of digital feminist organizing in Ethiopia and the role we all know digital platforms play, what are you seeing when it comes to digital activism in breaking silence around femicide? You have 2 minutes to respond to this, and we'll open up to the hubs across the Horn of Africa region. Over to you, Kia.
Okay, when it comes to the digital activism has success stories as well as some limitations. To begin with the success stories, it is just we can generate different data and we can mobilize people using very few resources. For example, when we are campaigning for Haven, just take me if I speak fast. Just give me a sign so I will slow down, Lauren. So when we, campaigned against the Days of Against Haven, we were able to collect more than 340,000 signatures. And the role of the, feminist activists on the social media was, to convert the public outcry into data. And then we demanded the government, to give a protection for Haven's mother, and we demanded justice. So I said it's partly successful because, first of all, we were able to generate, we were able to convert the public outcry into data. And second of all, following the public outcry, the Addis Ababa city mayor was able to give a house to Haven's mother. So the credit goes to everyone who were engaged in or who were demanding justice. And also recently, there was also another femicide perceived. The issue is, okay, let me rephrase it. To be politically and legally correct, the issue is ongoing. So the person is a suspect. So the issue is the person named Kanani was found dead, and the suspect was imprisoned. And then after 3 months, he was released. A 50,000 per bail. Following this incident, again, there is an organization who is organizing a reward for different musicians, and he was one of the awardees. Following the award, there was a campaign on digital platforms that demand the organization to revoke, the award, and that's advocacy worked, and the organization revoked that award. So I think there are some success stories on digital platforms, but there is also limitation because, sometimes virality doesn't guarantee justice. And among the many femicide cases, only few of them become, viral. For instance, in Ethiopia, within 1 year, around 26 femicide cases were reported on different social media and mainstream media platforms. However, only a couple of them gets viral. So I think as a solution, the digital campaign should be integrated with the activities on the ground so that we can able to, demand reform into the legal system, cultural reforms, and we can also pressure the politicians to bring the issue of gender-based violence on the table. Over to you, Dori.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kia. You speak about the failing system, bribery, corruption, and how women continue to mistrust the system because it doesn't protect them and it is not there for them. This is a continuing conversation. We have different sisters and friends joining us from across the region. I am going to open this up to our friends that are seated across the region, and I will start with Port Sudan. Please feel free to ask a question or leave a comment. So if we can zoom in to Port Sudan. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to Nafisa. Do we have any questions from Port Sudan? Okay.
Yes, we have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Yes, and please feel free to ask language.
شاكرة لإتاحة الفرصة وسعيدة إنه
Thank you for the opportunity.
أنا سؤالي يعني
My question,
تكلموا في نقاط كثيرة
they've spoken about different points. I want to know, now we are in war. As some has stated, they are seeking reforms that promotes women protection and advocating support for survivors in view of the war in Sudan. What are the mechanisms that we can use, because we are in instability? We don't have a government that we can sit with so that we can find the mechanism that activate the laws or to support survivors and collaborate with civil society and donors to seek reforms. What we can do so that we have legal reforms in this regard.
Okay, thank you for that question. We will take
Thank
another
you.
question from Sudan. Is there another question or comment? And then I'll hand this over to Hala to respond. Okay, Hala, over to you. Nefisa, did I hear you had another question?
No, this was the only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hala, over to you.
Well, it's it's definitely there is a challenge that we don't have a functioning institution. It's or at least an institution that can respond to any kind of reform at this point in time. Having said that, that does not mean that we are not going to do our homework and we will be waiting for a solution that's going to come from somewhere to help us. I think it's quite important, as civil society and as activists, to do what we can, starting with tracking and documenting the patterns of documentations in our societies. So we should be able to speak very clearly about what's happening in terms of femicide. I think we should also challenge, the status quo, the issues of insecurity, and continue to write, to the actors who are involved in this conflict frequently. And demanding, to stop the killing and the persecution and the gender genocides, of women. That's and the targeting of women. So our voices are critical in a status of conflicts, as much as we can. And I understand that often we feel very intimidated, and sometimes, we don't feel secure, but we can be very strategic and use platforms, that can help us to make our voices heard. And any room, as women, any room, any form of structure, starting from traditional, structures, to the presence to local governments, to any structure that in place that claims to be have the capacity to influence women, peace, and security, or to influence the status of women in society. You have to start by engaging with it. The thing is about challenging violence against women. As I said earlier, violence against women is it's a political struggle, as I said, and you have to use every tool you have, anything that we can use to challenge this status, and this situation. Reviewing the National Action Plan. I know Sudan has a National Action Plan. Review the National Action Plan and post an amended national action plan and amend it NAB and say, this is our view as civil society. This is where we stand, you know, considering the current situation and the current violations that we are encountering. Speak up against any patterns of violation that leads to the persecutions of women. And as I said, document as much as we can, you know, and build networks inside and externally. There is plenty of rooms. It might seem so close and so scary, but trust me, there is a room. Yeah, over to you, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Hala, for responding to that question. I see a lot of contribution in the comments, in the chat, and in the Q&A. Thank you so much to all of you. I will try and read some of them before I go to our next hub. I see that Gofran, you say you see a lot of similarities in the region with regard to femicide, and you're curious about the best practices within the region, particularly looking at how to engage with religion and culture. So one of our speakers will respond to that. Hayat, you say this is very insightful and informative. You thank SIHA for organizing this and also being honest about amplifying what femicide is and the issue that it is. Yes, I think your comment has been responded to. Shireen, I see you saying that yes, you're thanking SIHA for this. These are kind of spaces that we need across the region, and SIHA is emphasizing the need for collective and joint engagement and for everyone to be speaking up about this issue. So thank you so much, Miriam, for that. Manal, you're talking about how femicide is being used and the role of religion and culture as justifications and excuse for the targeted and intentional killing of women, and you confirm this is a black box and this is a war that needs to be engaged with. Susan, thank you so much for your comment. The perception of taking women as property promotes femicide, and you're talking about the commodification of women and girls across the region. Thank you for all the comments, for contributing to this very, very critical conversation. At this point, I would like us to go to Somalia. Siam, you have a question from Mogadishu. Please go ahead.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. My name is Siam. The question is going to be asked by Nasra. I think the question is, she's addressing it to Shamsa. So, Nasra, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Nasra. I'm very glad to be a part of this conversation today. My question is, what are the main challenges in addressing femicide in Somalia? And why do efforts to prevent it often fail to bring justice and protection for women? And how we can make our advocacy more effective? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nasra. Do we have another question from Mogadishu before we hand it over to Shamsa to respond?
No, Lauren, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Shamsa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Nasra. Hi to see her team in Mogadishu too. A very good question. She said she's talking about there may be what plan or what progress or process do we have on curbing all this. All we said, and everything will come back to the reforms again and the policies. We need to have a proper policy programming that will prevent the community from women killings and rapes and FGM and gender-based violence. Once we talk about all that, we need to have safe spaces for women, hotlines, counseling, and FCRM programs, that is feedback complaint response mechanisms, maybe through local events, not only in Mogadishu. We all know these problems come from across the region in Somalia. More so, the most affected population are the ones living in the states, the local states. We know that the local government states, that's like Jubaland, Puntland. We know the #1 leading rape cases comes from Puntland. We still have 8 cases that are not even attended to right now. We have some in Jubaland as well. So how do we reach to those people, and what do we have here? The best thing to have is to support protection services. We need to have safe spaces for women where a woman can come, or a girl, and she can explain what happened to her. For not fearing and scared of what will people say, what will community talk about. No, we need to have a very confidential hotlines for women and girls to at least air their voices when at that process we can actually even hide their identity and make it anonymous. And that way we have to go through a policy programming and prevention measures through CSOs, international organizations, the international community, and everybody that's dealing with gender through the Ministry of Women's and Human Rights are key to actually spearhead this, and we are working with them day and night. So Nasra, I don't know if I've answered your question. We need to have policies and programs that support women, and all that will be done through awareness, capacity building, trainings, talking to the local leaders, the gatekeepers, we call them. And that will come back to Hala's word of the black box. And Hala, from today, that black box will not be there. We'll polish it to be white. And we want to address these things publicly, and we do it every day. But engaging them and the local leaders, the religious elders, the women, youth, stakeholders, partners, that way it's a combined effort that everybody has to work from his end to advocate and to air this voice loudly, not in silence, not in this platform, but wherever we are. When we go back to our stations, our workplaces, we need to air it and make it louder. Let people see we are serious about it. We will work on it. And Nasra, for your questions, that is the protection measures we're supposed to take, and it will always come back to the reforms and the legal frameworks that we are going to enact, not the pinnacle code, but the ones that today, globally, it's being used in the international world. Thank you so much. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shamsa, for that elaborate response. I see that Hagesa also has a question. They have a hand up. So if they can go ahead, please respond to that, Shamsa.
Hi, good afternoon. So interesting to talk about the femicide for the first time. As I know, in Somaliland, I think there are so many economic challenges and financial independence for the others as women and girls. So the independence of the financially and the economic challenges sometimes can account for women for the different gender-based violence such as femicide. So my question is, what the practical steps to take about the economic and empowerment for the women and girls to reduce the risk, because the strength of women is economic and is key in safety and freedom and dignity for the woman. So how we can make progressive steps and to protect women for independence of their families and their relatives to reduce the femicide and cases like this always in a GBV or gender-based violence. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We were receiving an echo. I don't know if there's another question from Hagesa before we leave that hub, but her question is about the linkage to livelihoods and economic empowerment and femicide. So Yusuf, there was an echo. I don't know if you have another question. Should we respond to that? I can hear an echo. Okay, so I think there is no additional question from Hagesa. I don't know, Shamsa, if you can come back and respond to that, and then I'll read some of the contributions we have in the chat to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Laureen, once again. I don't know if I heard all of it, but I could hear the economic part of the funding. We all know Somalia and Somaliland are donor-dependent countries. The international communities and the international organizations are trying so hard to come in, and actually they have done a lot. We really, really congratulate them on that. If not them, even this step that we are today, we couldn't come to that place. And for us to come together today and discuss about the femicide, how are we gonna approach, what mechanisms are we using, what are the main, enablers that we are supposed to use to end this. For the resources, I think the government themselves should put a hand in it, and the resource mobilization should come from the government itself. They have to bring their bit. The rest is being finished by the international community and the international organizations. We all know what fundings and how we get our programs funded throughout. And I don't think it's a big deal. We still encourage women to be empowered, what we always talk about, for them to have small scale businesses. Let them do agriculture. We see women from a perspective of climate change. What can they do when it comes to what mitigations are we supposed to, capacity build on them, because they're the ones who are being flooded, them and the children. So the gap is big. The resources are there, but limited. But with, I think, the good foot and how we're moving our agendas with the help of the international community that we always rely on, and we know, and we thank them every day, I think from there we can do something better, and resource mobilization is the key, specifically from the government itself and the international donors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Shamsa, for that. We do have a question from the Uganda Hub. So Uganda, over to you. We cannot hear you. I think you're muted. Okay, it's coming. Please go ahead. We can hear you if you can speak loudly, and please address your question to one of the panelists.
Thank you very much. Mine is not really a question, but it's a kind of a remark and a second also a request. After having heard a presentation from the many of the speakers, and I may have a question in the box. One, the issue of the femicide is so alarming and everywhere. But how are ways that, as maybe SIHA Network, to take deliberate effort to have this translated into local languages, because we have a lot of women at that level who are going through this, but we don't know so much about femicide. But if you do this maybe in the local languages, I think it will be easier for us to join, to raise their voices at that level. That's one. Secondly, the issue of what the advocacy science we do. I've realized men, of course, are at forefront when it comes to the drivers not being the factors, people who are leading in these issues. So the question is, how can we meaningfully engage men? how can we bring men on board to understand what we want to achieve? Sometimes, many occasions, we have women issues that they discuss. These issues are about the women and aid around the women. So can we take or can we make a deliberate effort to bring men on board so that if we join to fight together so that they understand what it means? Because I feel many of the men are not engaged in the things, many of the men are not empowered. That's why a lot of this are done. So the request that as partners, as all of us, that let's join hands so that we bring men on board. Not together, we can end this voice, we can end femicide. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Do we have another question or comment from Uganda before we leave the Uganda hub?
Yes, I have two questions. One is about the growing concern of facilitated or cross-border facilitated femicide, which is growing on the whole of Africa. Can I be that? Can you hear me?
Yes, if you can raise your voice, please.
Okay. I was saying that I have two questions. The first one is about the growing concern of trade facilitated and cross-border trade facilitated femicide, which is mostly happening on the Horn of Africa. We've seen some cases between the borders of Uganda, DRC, and the borders of Uganda and South Sudan. So my question is that this is, first of all, this is a conversation we need to start having. But if I may ask Madam Hala, is there anything that is being done by the network to look into this issue? And then the second one is, it can go to any speaker, but I really want to ask about how can we include transitional justice in femicide, because some of these victims who have lost their lives, it does scar the community and the members of the family. So how can we ensure that we also have transitional justice to ensure that we can heal these communities who have suffered femicide and its effects? Thank you. Sorry, we have too many hands. We have only two more to go. Sorry. Please confirm you can hear us, Lorraine.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Sophie. Mine is not a question. I'm just some small argument here. My colleague Goli spoke it well, but I'm speaking from Uganda's perspective. This thing called femicide is still a new language. And I must admit, it's a new language to many people. And in Uganda, it is not recognized as a distinct crime. If I'm very sincere to myself. And I'm very sure in the civil society, there are many people struggling with this word femicide. We know genocide, homicide. Now, if you want it very specific here, I want you to recognize the following. One, we lack official data statistics for this thing called femicide. And you know, for us, NGO, the civil society, do more of that. There's no proper statistic. How sure are we that what we are going to do, maybe the action we are going to come up with, will be from an informed point of view? So the issue of data is very key. That's what I'm saying. Two, data is becoming one country where the issue of law is becoming a different thing, especially in the political system like this. My question is, we have regulatory mechanisms in place, and are those reports there? Because how will I know that this thing exists and someone's responsible? So that is also what I'm saying. From my point of view, there's weak protection mechanism for women at risk. And who are these women at risk? This will come here. There's this thing called feminism. We sometimes confuse women. This thing, I think, I'm sorry, maybe. And I think we need to also define some of this knowledge is clear. Lastly, I have a solution here. It's real. It's not a good thing. The story is long. We may not even finish it. What do we have at hand? I'm proposing this for our case of Uganda. Can we have a legal framework in place? Because I don't think if we have this within our legal framework. Two, can we establish a community-based femicide tracking and reporting system? That is what I'm trying to suggest. Then lastly, we may be here speaking, maybe this is our first time. Can we be lectured? Can we be educated more on this thing called femicide? My last call is bring us men on board. Bring men on board so that we speak the same language. Otherwise, thank you so much, presenters. This has been a regional perspective. It's a very good one. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uganda. We will come back to our panelists. So, Hala, you can respond to some of those. Kia, please feel free to respond to Sam and Shamsa, and then we'll move to South Sudan Hub.
Thank you, Lauren. I don't think I'll be able to answer everything, but I really appreciate the, the diversity and the fact that, there is interest also from our colleagues on civil society beyond the women organizations, those who are interested in governance and interested in human rights, because this is a societal issue. This is not a women issue alone. And this is something that we keep saying all the time, that women issues are societal issues. And, I'll start, by, remind me, Lauren, the first, the question that I remember it very well, that women getting killed at cross borders, and that's a button of vulnerability that we really need to emphasize. And that's happening across the region, that when women crossing the borders, they are way more susceptible to being killed, especially, women trying to earn a living, as traders, they are a target, for a number of bandits and non-state actors and so on. So, and this is a very, very clear example, what I have mentioned before. So we have to start seriously documenting and tracking incidents of women being killed, at cross borders, and by whom, and the circumstances about these crimes, and then develop a reporting mechanism constantly and follow up and tracking with the families. That's really very, very important. And I think there is a room, to make it a national issue, similar to the, our friends and colleagues here who, within the civil society, when we were witnessing, if you remember, just a few years back, the issue of women being killed, women who were found moving at night, for example, in isolated locations. That happened here in Kampala, where women, they have been targeted frequently by a specific group of gangs who were, just specifically targeting women who were moving around at night. So, so once we have documentations, we have profiles of those women, and we understand the circumstances, we will be able to build and construct our advocacy campaign, and then to engage with the authority and to engage with local justice and national justice mechanism. It's really very, very important to engage, despite the hefty price and the complications of engaging. We might be rejected, it might be difficult, we might not be listened to, but being persistent and continue to engage and making records of our engagements is basically what's going to drive the change. It's, and trust me on this, I'm someone who has been in civil society for a very long time. I have experience on, both modalities. The first model is to work in complete isolations from the local governments. The second model is to engage despite the complications, that can happen. And sometimes, insecurity or insafety that we might encounter. But if we are up for change, we must engage with local governments. We must identify allies, but that has to be based on our work. And Shamsa, I think, yes, ongoing communications with international donors is important, but also communications, when we are ready, when we have clear strategy and vision that we can talk about, when we are really have done our homework on the ground. And I think, yes, we keep hearing that, our countries are really reliant on donors. We are very wealthy countries just by having intelligent, smart people like yourself and, all those people in the different rooms, and the natural resources and the potentials our countries has. So that's really very important. There is a question about how to engage men. I think, everyone is intelligent and smart enough to be part of this movement. You don't need anyone to hold your hand to support the movement against violence against women. You're doing it for the stability of your city, the stability of your region, the stability of your country. You're doing it for the prosperity, for the development, of your country, and also for the safety and security of your own, family members, of your sisters, of your daughters, going to school, of everyone around you, So it's absolutely up to the men. The movement is quite open and it's not restricted, nor it's limited. And it's not our job to find ways in terms of how men can be part of the movement. The doors are open. Anyone should have, is welcome, to join the movement and to join the struggle against violence against women. Yeah, over to you, Laurie.
Thank you so much, Hala. Reminding us that more than half of the population across any country doesn't feel safe, and the doors are open for anyone that would like to be part of this movement to contribute to ending femicide. Before I leave Uganda, I think we had a police officer that was about to speak. And there's been a lot of concern raised about the protections, the legal and policy framework, and making reference to the Penal Code Act. So we have you here in this space, and it would be a pleasure to hear how the police sector and the police force in Uganda is addressing femicide. Over to you in Uganda.
Hello.
Please, if you could raise your voice a little bit? Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. No, it's okay. Just sorry. You okay now? Okay, thank you. And thank you so much. My name is Jimmy. I work for police, and I'm the regional gender focal person and person charged with the responsibility of investigating these issues related to femicide. I also work with the SIHA as a male ally, and I appreciate this wonderful conversation. Femicide goes beyond himself. It is rooted in power imbalances, misogyny, and discriminatory cultural norms. Looking at the common forms, that is intimate partner femicide, partner-based killings, dowry-related killings, sexual violence-related killings, targeted killings of women in conflict settings, including political activists and human rights defenders. It's rising in Uganda, especially among the urban centers. I acknowledge that. Now, the question is, what is the role of men and boys, the cultural leaders, and the religious leaders in mitigating or preventing femicide? Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you so much. You raise a number of critical points to say religious leaders, cultural leaders, all the other institutions that are custodians of patriarchy and male dominance need to play a role in this. And Afande, thank you so much for that contribution. We will now be moving on to South Sudan. You had a question from Wow. Please go ahead. Is the South Sudan team there? South Sudan in WOW? As South Sudan comes, I would like to go to Shams and Kia in case there is any comments that you wanted to respond to. Oh, South Sudan has come. Okay, we'll come back to you, Shamsa.
سامعوني؟
Yes, we can hear you.
يا سامعينك. يا أنا معاكم. معاكم السيدة سليم.
I am Said Salim. Meanwhile, I would to add something to the points mentioned as women in WOW. We have some problems that can be that might have been mentioned, but in WOW we have in the problems in the increasing suicide cases. When we talk about suicides, God prevented and prohibited suicide. And some women were killed, but here in WOW we have a wider scale suicides among youth and girls. This goes back to some problems in families and what some life difficulties were and use of drugs and its entry to the country. This increased suicide cases amongst youth. The other point, the customary laws impact on the women's rights. In addition, in WOW we have customary laws enacted before 2 months. These laws as part of the general law that violates women's rights. As women here, we talked about this and we raised our voices about this, but up until now, we have not had any response about the positive result that would help women to achieve their justice and rights. Last, we still have the women genital mutilation, which impacts women, since state prevented this and prohibited this, but there is still existing practices of women genital mutilation. We always raise awareness about this. With the help of Mobutu Protocol, this helped the women here. People talked about this. In addition to the issue of financial situation, as women here, we have formed a committee which visited the relevant institutions related to enacting laws and financial policies, so they help support women so that they have the rights and within the economy, they help women how they can empower themselves economically within the country's economy, so that they are empowered. Last, in our institutions, the gender office is there in the ministry, but we need in each department we have gender units, so that they look at the women's issues within the governmental institutions. This we are still advocating for this with the state government, so that they avail opportunities, so that we solve the problems that women face in the social settings and political settings, which would help women to have their rights.
All right, thank you so much. Is there another question? Just one more, and then we go to Ethiopia. Our panelists will respond at the end.
Yes. Yeah, I'm Mama Rabha from WOW. I want to say, I would like to thank SIHA really for taking us to on femicide. Indeed, when I had this, I get that domestic violence became as one of the tools of killing women. By domestic violence, some women have committed suicide. So that means this is one of the tools of femicide. And my question is there any strategy that SIHA put for how can we, so this is my question. And if it is not there, I think domestic violence, they are focused on message is good, but the root causes of this domestic violence, many actors are not taking, not putting it in consideration. So to me, I see like if SIHA will put much effort on domestic violence, it could be better. محاربة العنف المنزلي. So بكون في استراتيجية خاصة عشان يحاربوا.
There has to be specific strategy to combat domestic violence, to stop suicides among women. Every week we hear there is a report about suicide case. It could be a woman or a girl, all because of the domestic violence. It would be better if SIHA on the continental level. I heard in the Ethiopia's representation there is domestic violence and suicide cases in Somal. We do have this also in South Sudan. If God wills, we expect some efforts from SIHA that they focus on domestic violence, so that we end this. And so many women have died because of domestic violence without having their voices heard, without people knowing that women have suffered from domestic violence up until they suicide. It's definitely that the domestic violence has become one of the tools of femicides. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Mama Rapa. Let's move to Ethiopia. We are taking note of some of those questions, and many of them are recommendations or comments that are being made. So Ethiopia, over to you.
Wow. Sorry, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Sia, as well. Good to see you all. My name is Lensa. I'm a retired junior advocate. I just wanted to reflect on one or two points. Thank you for putting all our issues and our data on board. It's just maybe if it is helpful for our brothers and sisters, because I've seen men also. So for our brothers and sisters from other countries, one of the things we have in Ethiopia that can be shared is, of course, regarding the law and the practice, the culture, the custom, and everything which was raised. Aside from that, I have seen, or I know that there is this initiative from the Ministry of Justice. Maybe my colleagues or my friends here will add on it, but there is a special prosecution office, not bench, but office, which is specifically designated to see cases of femicide. I think, and also there was another initiative which we have been working to have a standalone anti-GBV policy. I know that the policy is not accepted, and it's meant, or it's decided to be part of the bigger women's policy, but still if we as a civil society organizations keep pushing and advocating for a standalone anti-GBV policy, that anti-GBV policy try to address those remaining issues which the previous criminal code has left. So it will be also one of a good entry. But the special prosecution office, even though we don't have a special prosecution bench, and the cases will be treated as a normal case, and obviously when the prosecution is passed, whether it's a days penalty or imprisonment or all, the bench is the same, but the ministry designating a specific office will be helpful, even to support and to assist that office and see what kinds of gaps and possibilities of collaboration that they have with civil society organizations as well. So in the meantime, in the process of waiting for a law amendment or a law that will specifically criminalize femicide and domestic violence, I guess working in collaboration with this office will try to sort of help for the advocacy or the advocate for advocating the anti-GBV policy to be passed. But in general, I share the issue of femicide and also other left. From the Ethiopian perspective, I believe most of the issues were addressed in the previous criminal code, and there are a few cases that seriously needs attention at this moment, also in the implementation, which we always talk about. So with the implementation side, I guess this will be a little bit of an opening to work with the Special Prosecution Office. That's what I want to add. Thank you again. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Lensa, for that incredible contribution. Yep. And this conversation will continue with that office that you've proposed. Ethiopia, do you have one last question?
Very good from the side. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ethiopia. We do have 7 minutes left, and we would like our speakers to be able to respond to some of these questions. But before we do, I want to mention that there is a survey that is being shared in the chat. Please go to the survey form and complete it. And for those of you in the hubs, the country facilitators will share these forms with you. We do have a number of questions that have been raised, and I would like to now go to some of our panelists. So Kia, if you can come in 2 minutes. Kia, do you
Awesome.
have, yes,
First of
please
all, I'd
come.
like to thank Lisa for raising the issue about a special office designated for femicide by Ministry of Justice. I really appreciate that initiative. But however, that being said, still that office is referring to the existing law and policies. So I would like to encourage the Ethiopian government and the legal actors to expand the initiative and approve the draft anti-GBV law, so that, you know, subsequent laws that can address femicide can be, you know, formulated. On top of that, there are also other, you know, gender-based violence cases such as acid attack, gang rape, domestic violence. You know, all this type of violence doesn't have their own policies and laws, but they are really contributing, you know, to femicide. So again, I would like to encourage the Ethiopian government to speed up the ratification of the anti-GBV law and formulate law to address these gender-based violence cases, including femicide. On top of this, I also would like to encourage, you know, our politicians to bring the issue of women to the table, because, you know, women are the one who are paying the ultimate price, especially within the context of conflict, but they are always sidelined from the conversation. For instance, you know, during the Pretoria Peace Agreement that resolved the war in the Tigray region, even though 120,000 women in Tigray were subjected to different forms of gender-based violence, according to the Tigray Authority data. You know, they weren't represented during the peace talk. The same is true during the peace talk that was held in Tanzania between the Ethiopian government and also the armed group in the Oromia region, the Oromo Liberation Army. So again, I would like to reiterate that women are paying the ultimate price due to conflict, but they are always sidelined from the main conversation. So I would like to encourage our politicians to, you know, bring the issue of gender-based violence to the table. And again, just to sum up, I would like to call our like the fellow African feminists, we need collaboration, because we have already seen that the pattern is the same across African countries. You know, there is like prolonged conflict, there is, you know, militarized masculinity, FGM is common. So we need to collaborate more, we need to work together so that we can address, you know, this systemic problem together. Yeah, that's my final remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kia, for that. Before I go to Shamsa for her final remarks, we have a request from Juba team to make a comment. So Juba, over to you. We do not hear you, Juba team.
Hello.
Yes, now the sound is perfect. Thank you. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Zakia. I'm from South Sudan Association of the Visually Impaired and also a disability rights activist. I'm very happy to be part of this event that has been organized by SIHA. My question is only one. Maybe I will add another one in second, just 1 second. The first question is, I want to know, like, the issue of GBV facing women and girls with disabilities. As SIHA, how do we cooperate, like, with the OBD's Organization of Persons with Disabilities to address the issue of GBV actually within the Horn of Africa? And then the second, when I was come, because I came a bit late, I was hearing in the presentation of Hala, she was mentioning something very important in the data. So I want to know the issue of women with disabilities in numbers. How are they being affected with the issue of GBV? Because the most violence that they have been targeted, especially in our country here in Juba, I will see the abuses that women are really facing it, especially women with mental psychosocial disabilities. So those kind of violence, how in numbers disaggregated data, how are they facing it? How are you able to collect the report of the number of persons with disabilities? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Straight to the point.
Okay. I'm Zara Agnes John. Direct to the question. Okay, the question goes, how do we assure the protection of the rape survivors who face online bullying, victim blaming, and defamation? And then the second question is, in the absence of GVV bill, how do we assure protection and prevention of women going through GVV?
One last question.
Osman, and I'm very happy to be in this panel. Thank you, Sia, for this great webinar. Mine is that we have done so much, yet femicide is on the increase. What is it that we have not done well? That's the only question I have for the day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Esther Kwahina in Juba, South Sudan. I'm a hearing impaired. My question is, you have talked about GBV, which is facing women with disabilities in Somalia. But here in South Sudan, we have women with disability, especially the hearing impaired. They are subjected to different abuses of GBV. For example, women in the IDP camp, how do you support them, or how do you incorporate their voices in the Horn of Africa, looking at the climate change? Thank you. Just the last one.
Thank you very much. My name is Lenny Thomas. First, women have been at the heart of victimization in all forms globally, regardless of all efforts asserted. What can be done differently to create an inclusive, safe, ideal, friendly environment for women and girls in the Horn of Africa? Thank you.
All right, thank you,
Back
South
to you,
Sudan.
Lorraine. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I'll hand over to Shamsa, and in her closing remarks, she may respond to some of these questions, but also to let you know that you are in hubs, and we encourage you to continue this conversation and speaking among each other, and we would be happy to respond to any questions that are sent to info@sihanet.org. So over to you, Shamsa.
Thank you so much, Laureen, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in this panel today. I'm so happy, thanks to the tech team and all the participants from the different regions. My closing remarks is all these things that we are talking about will come back to the legal frameworks. We need to have a better policy programming within our projects. Let's try to mainstream and figure out, when we are aligning and doing projects, that gender should be a key thing. What are we looking at? The disability term, the protection, the safeguarding, the safe places for women. And I mean, what Hala said is true. Yeah, if we don't have a proper documentation, nothing can be done. So between the line, the reporting and the responses should be very accurate. No time wasted in between for the victim to be reluctant or maybe negligence, and then within the process, even the perpetrator is not found. So let's be very accurate on our FCRM, how we use our feedback, complaint response mechanisms from the reporting time to the responses, so that we act very fast. Let the hotlines work. Let's spread the word across. Let's voice for the voiceless. And let's bring our brothers, the main factor that we were talking about, they should be our ambassadors in this. They should also work with us. They are fathers, we know they are our brothers, and they should not allow others who don't understand what gender is and what the importance of women are in this society to oppress and, advocate and promote GBV. We say no to GBV, we say no to rape, We say no to FGM. We say no to women discrimination in terms of political participation, the equality, the gender, social, and equity in the society, and the rights we have within in our communities, especially the war conflict-based communities like Somalia, Sudan, for example. We know what we undergo. There's a sister of mine from Sudan who asked about, Susan, I think, are your tribes the same? Yes. So Sudan, you say there are 64 tribes. Somalia, we have 4 major clans, and all of them are the same. And they treat women the same. Women are not respected, they are not given chances. And for some of us who came out to talk about this, we are being actually looked from another angle, another perspective, that these ones are now shame to the society. And we don't care about those things. We are here to advocate. We are here to do awareness. We are here to voice for the voiceless. And our agenda is women, and our agenda is gender. Thank you so much, Lorraine.
All right, thank you so much, Shamsa, for that and responding to the question raised by South Sudan. Before I give it to Hala to make her final remarks, I would like to remind everyone we have shared a survey tool. Please scan the QR code or click on the link, and we would like to hear from you on how you can engage with SIHA beyond this, as well as to access resources on this topic. So now I hand over to Hala.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I don't have much to say. This is a critical issue. Losing women's lives is not something we should take lightly. We shouldn't normalize. We should stand against it collectively, whether those lives are lost as a result of domestic violence, or if those lives were lost as a result of insecurity or claims, fake claims of traditions and culture, which is completely lie. We all know that those lives were lost because of oppression and because of hate. And, that's the most important thing. So continue to do the good work, document, stand on the front line, engage, have conversation with each other, men and women and officials and policymakers. That's really important. That's a path to make change and reach for solidarity with our allies and friends at the international community. Thank you very much. I have learned a lot, and I hope to see that down the road we manage to develop a regional strategy that looks at the issue of femicides in every space in this part of the world, and to develop our own database, and to, based on that, we can inform our local policies. Thanks to all of you for attending and being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hala. As we open up our cameras, we would like to take a picture of this moment. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining this powerful and necessary conversation. 2 hours are not enough. We hope that those of you that are in the hubs are going to continue this conversation. And just to say, as we've had today, femicide is not just a personal tragedy, it's a political crisis and a society emergency, and we all need to call and play a role. So let's continue building this community of solidarity across borders, identities, and movements. Thank you so much to SIHA Network for bringing us all together for this very necessary conversation. So I'll say thank you to all of you for sitting with us and staying 8 extra minutes for this conversation, but do open your cameras, let's take a picture, and remember this moment as we will join SIHA in implementing and crafting that regional strategy to address femicide. Thank you so much. So the SIHA team will confirm to us if the pictures have been taken. So everyone, please turn your videos on if you're able to. Okay, can I just get confirmation from our teams that the picture has been taken? One more minute. Okay. Thank you. I've got confirmation that the photos have been taken. Thank you so much again. And we are requesting you to kindly fill out the QR code for us to understand how we can engage better with you. Thank you and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you so much, Laureen. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye.